It's taken long enough, but adventure bike buyers on a budget are finally starting to get spoiled for choice. A couple of years ago, the Royal Enfield Himalayan was your only real option at this price point. But today you can choose from the likes of the KTM 250 Adventure, the freshly launched Yes the Adventure, and this, the Benelli TRK 251. Think of the TRK 251 as a shrunken down version of Benelli's giant TRK 502. This bike carries the same design language, including the insect-like LED headlamp and the substantial side panels. It's all put together quite nicely for the most part, with good-looking fasteners used all over, and there is no feeling of this being a cheap motorcycle. The sleek tail section looks quite nice as well, but this is hidden away under a rather substantial-looking metal rear rack. The tail section is finished with a smart-looking rear hugger. Meanwhile, the rider gets an LCD instrument console which has a clock and basic trip data, but there's no comprehensive trip computer data here. There is, however, the practicality of a fuel tank mounted USB charging port. The TRK's design and presence is definitely one of its strong points, and with all that bodywork on top, yes, it does look a little Johnny Bravo from some angles, but overall, this is a stylish and eye-catching machine. The TRK looks like quite a large motorcycle, but it feels rather easy and inviting once you sit on it. The 800mm seat height is primarily to thank here, but the bike is also quite light to maneuver thanks to a sub 180 kg curb weight. The riding position is all about comfort, and that windscreen does a pretty decent job of restricting wind blast onto the rider's chest without creating any annoying helmet buffeting. Of course, this will vary based on rider height and the helmet they're wearing. Now, with the way this bike is designed, you're probably expecting it to have a pretty decent amount of off-road capability. But the reality is that the TRK 251 wants to spend a majority of its time on the tarmac. There are quite a few things that give this away, the biggest one of them being the fact that it runs 17-inch wheels wrapped in sporty Metzeler M5 tires. There are other things as well, like the shape of the fuel tank that doesn't feel very natural while standing up, or the fact that there is no underbelly protection for the engine. More so, the suspension travel figures are what you'd expect to find from a standard street bike, and there is no way to turn off the rear ABS, which makes it tricky to slow down in time on loose surfaces. Now that we've established that the TRK 251 is primarily a road bike, it's a good time to talk about what this 250cc single-cylinder engine is like. The immediate thought is that this engine sounds just like any other run-of-the-mill single-cylinder motor, and there is no sweet music coming out of the exhaust pipe like you get with Benelli's larger parallel twin engines. The engine also feels buzzy in the foot pegs, and there is no shaking the sense that this is not as refined as its rivals. On the plus side, the gearing in the first 4 gears is nice and short, and the engine feels very tractable and easy to ride in higher gears at slower speeds. Flat-out performance is also quite decent. It's noticeably quicker than the likes of the Royal Enfield Himalayan and the much lighter X-Pulse 200 4V. In the 0 to 100 test, it's just about 1 second slower than the more powerful KTM 250 Adventure. In fact, the short gearing has resulted in quicker in-gear acceleration times than the KTM managed in our tests. As for fuel efficiency, the figures we got were not as high as the KTM 250 Adventure managed, but the Benelli has a much bigger 18-litre fuel tank, so it will probably cover longer distances on a tank full. Overall, the performance is decently brisk, but this is the sort of bike that likes to be ridden in a more gentle manner. Perhaps the most disappointing aspect of the TRK's performance is its brakes. Our test numbers actually threw up a pretty good figure for the 60 to 0 stopping test, but to get that, you have to grab the front lever with all your fingers and pull as hard as you can. Strong braking on this motorcycle is a bit of a workout, and on top of that, the dual-channel ABS system is quite intrusive. In fact, we had a couple of instances while lightly braking over some bumps in the road where the ABS suddenly kicked in very aggressively. This turned the brake lever hard and significantly increased the stopping distance. That's not a very nice feeling, and it's something Benelli needs to improve. On the bright side, the suspension is set up quite well, and it absorbs bumps and broken surfaces in a manner that makes a TRK a rather comfortable bike on our roads. As for handling, it's a similar story to the engine performance, and the bike doesn't mind carrying a brisk pace, but it starts to feel a little less comfortable and confident if you start asking for too much in the corners. The TRK 251 comes into India as a CKD kit, which means aggressive pricing is a challenge for Benelli. At 2.51 lakh rupees ex-showroom, the TRK is priced above the KTM 250 Adventure, and it doesn't really have any standout features or performance to offer for that additional price.
The TRK has a few things going in its favor, but at the end of the day, this is more expensive than its rivals, and it's not as capable an adventure bike in the true sense of the term. If you love the way it looks and you simply want an easy, comfortable, adventure-style motorcycle, well, you might like what this has to offer. If not, there are more convincing options out there.